you solve one of the oldest problems in humanity, it's pretty valuable. And that is, of course, securing your property from theft. Now, Bitcoin gives us the option of storing our private property in a way that requires no cost, no effort, and is transportable and secure. But still today, so many people get this wrong. In fact, it's estimated that over 5 million Bitcoins have been lost or hacked away, which is super sad. It's really disturbing. And so in today's conversation with Matej, we will discuss the different options that you have to secure your cryptocurrency. We're going to talk about the trade-offs of each different solution, how a beginner should be thinking about it all the way up to a seasoned pro. Now, if you want to secure your wealth from theft and loss, which of course you should, then you need to listen to this conversation. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. But Matej, thank you so much for joining me today. Man, I'm excited to talk about one of the most important topics, I think, in my opinion, which is the ability to hold our own private property. In the United States, our founding fathers said that we should have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but really it came from life, liberty, and property. And so I think property is just the fundamental thing that's important for any civilization to really have freedom. So let's talk about that, the ability to hold our property. That's a big topic I want to talk about, and the ways that we can do that. I know you build a piece of technology that really helps people do that in a very safe way. Before we jump into that big topic, just to set the stage, Matej, tell us who you are and why are you working on such an important task? How'd you get here?
Yeah, awesome. So thanks for having me. So I joined the company 5 years ago as a product manager. And eventually, one thing led to another, and I got eventually promoted to the CEO role, which is, of course, very humbling and a very humbling experience and big tasks as well. And so we are, as a Trezor company, as you suggested, our mission is all about basically keeping the private keys from your Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, securely stored in a device that's built specifically for that. And for me as a product manager, product managers are usually called like mini CEOs of a product. So that's how I started with a smaller project within the company. And honestly, I didn't know that much about the whole space when I joined, but the opportunity to work with the founders directly, and I don't mean just founders of Trezor, but actually founders of the whole industry, because they were the first ones to build the first ever hardware wallet in the world, and build the protocol on which many wallets now work in terms of backing up the private keys in a human readable format. So it's a standard that we use, but also our competitors, software wallets, etc. So kind of this opportunity to work with them directly made me, a Bitcoiner basically. And so through the work of product management, I got to Bitcoin. I got orange pilled from, the guys in the industry, and that's kind of awesome. And and since then I basically built many products. I guess we will talk about that, but I'm having a great time.
Yeah. What a good industry to be in. I mean, the amount of positive energy that comes into the space. I mean, that's why I love. We were just talking about earlier, getting to these events and getting to meet people, even such as you. But the level of energy that's there. I mean, I think the shared values. When I think about as a product manager, when I think about a product. And I mean, this is just basically a sort of a rule of life. It's that the way that we earn, the reason why anyone would give us money would be because we've created some sort of value for them. We've solved the problem for them. And by solving a problem, we've created value for them. And if we want to make more money, we have to learn to solve higher value problems. And so if you could, help somebody buy a hamburger at McDonald's and you're pushing a button, that's not a whole lot of value, and that's only one person. If you're a brain surgeon, you're saving somebody's life. That's way more value. It's still one person. But if you could create computers that everybody in the world could use, like Bill Gates and Windows, now you've created a lot of value. You make a lot of money. And I think about the problem of storing my property in a way that can't be stolen, which is maybe the oldest problem in humanity. How do I keep my property from my neighbor coming and stealing it, or the next village or tribe or whatever it is? And even the role of government today should be to protect ourselves. And so if we could come up with a way to store our property and protect it in a way that can't be stolen, maybe solving one of the oldest problems in history, that's a big problem. That creates a lot of value. That's sort of the way that I look at it. I'm just curious your take on that.
I mean, obviously, I agree, and I realize we are solving, and this is a huge problem for a lot of people. As I mentioned, by us creating this protocol of basically translating those private keys, that is something like a long Wi-Fi password that would be really difficult to remember or record, write down in some way. We created this backup that you can basically translate that difficulty into like a human readable format which you can write down. And why I'm saying it, because it's basically solving the problem for a lot of people, because it's immensely scalable in the way that a lot of companies have started using this standard, and so it has really impacted the lives of a lot of people in that way. So that's sort of on the cryptography or software level, but obviously we are primarily, or our business is primarily hardware, because we are selling hardware wallets. And as being first, and as I think I kind of like that, very obviously there has been a big demand for these devices, because we are solving, as you said, a real problem, right? So whenever Bitcoin is pumping, our sales are going strongly up because more people are trying to solve this problem for themselves, right? So that's kind of, I kind of like to see that we are not sort of trying to sell some artificial problem, but the demand is coming simply by Bitcoin being stronger, being stronger in the world. And it's kind of nice, right? Like, because like having the strongest marketing by kind of this like kind of awesome tool that is out there for everybody to take. So yeah, it's kind of nice.
Okay, so let's talk this through from the top down. So this is a question I get all the time. First of all, how do I buy Bitcoin, and then how do I take custody of it? Well, not just custody. So a lot of people maybe don't even go down that route. So, if I'm going to buy it on an exchange, or I'm going to buy it through an ETF, like, what are my options? My options are, leave it on the exchange, self-custody it myself. And then if I want to self-custody myself, then what are my options from there? So let's walk this through from your point of view. So number one, I can either leave it on the exchange, or I can custody it myself. A lot of people think very linear, like black and white here, but I think there's pros and cons to both. So how would you explain that, the trade-offs of those two things?
Right. So I talk about this quite a lot, but a couple, few numbers. In 2022 alone, $15 billion worth of Bitcoin has been kind of hacked or has been lost from the market due to hacks, scams, or bankruptcies of exchanges, basically. So as to how to acquire Bitcoin, it's totally fine to start on exchange. I think it's okay, even though you can do it through the hardware ecosystem as well, which we can talk about later. But it's fine to do that. But I would just not leave those coins, or definitely not a significant amount. That might be different for everybody, but significant amount for the given person. I would not leave it on the exchange for too long, because simply these exchanges are like a massive honeypots for hackers, right? Because like if you're like a hacker, of course you would go after the big players, right? Like you would try to breach into their system and try to kind of steal money from them. And I mentioned 2022, but just like a couple of weeks ago, I think there was a major hack on this Japanese DMM Bitcoin exchange, and I think they lost like $300 million worth of Bitcoin. So these hacks are happening, all the time. So long story short, it's fine to purchase it on the exchange. Just don't leave it. Move it to self-custody of a hardware wallet, because those devices are specifically built for the sort of top-notch security. They are single-purpose devices, so they are not connected to internet. You can do anything else with them, which is kind of the point. Because if you leave it on your phone, the phone can do a lot of different things. It's connecting to internet, etc., right? So it's not as secure. So when you have like bigger amounts, it's basically too risky.
So the first scenario is, number one, I buy the Bitcoin. I have to buy that from an exchange, most likely. I mean, sure, I could meet somebody somewhere, but most likely you're buying it from an exchange. And my options are either one, I leave it on the exchange, and in that case, I let them hold the private key to that, and then I'm trusting them to keep it secure for me. Option number two is then I can take custody of myself, which means I no longer have the counterparty risk of the exchange, but now I have to be responsible for what happens with that. Now, I guess on the exchange, you have risks. So some of the risks might be that their security is not good and they get hacked, like you said. I personally had 24 Bitcoin hacked from my account on Bittrex, which promised to be the most safe and secure platform out there, which is obviously a big lie. We went through court to prove that. But anyway, so you trust them to keep it safe and secure. And to the point that you said, billions of dollars have been lost because it's not safe and secure. Now, you could argue that Coinbase, let's say, for example, has really good custody. I mean, they're custodying the Bitcoin for most of the ETFs today. I would imagine their custody is pretty good if they're custodying that. But then there's other trade-offs, and there's unknowns that we don't know, such as maybe they don't let you get it off for some reason. For any kind of reason, right?
Right. There's first I would say like FTX has been considered as a great product as well, right? Like
Good point.
Those are the unknown unknowns. So I'm not saying Coinbase is going down or anything like that. Of course, like I don't know, like I think it's probably a fair service. Just the risk is there simply. I would say, right? Like this.
Yeah, FTX is a good example of that.
Right. And so that's one. The other, I would say, disadvantage that we haven't mentioned is these exchanges are quite regulated. So you would have to definitely KYC yourself. That means you would have to, basically connect your identity to your accounts. What that means? Well, some people, hackers included, the government, other entities could kind of learn how much money you have and where you have it, right? So, and in self-custody, you don't have to do that because you simply hold those keys yourself, and you don't have to prove to anybody that you are the owner of those funds. So it's pseudonymous in a way that basically you can't tell who that person is. So that's another, I would say, big advantage of self-custody for especially those more privacy oriented people, which I believe you all are basically, right? Because
I just understand there's trade-offs with everything. So, in the United States, I put my money in a bank. And so a lot of us think about a bank relationship. And so I think a lot of us bring that sort of banking relationship to the Bitcoin ecosystem where we think, well, banks hold our money, so I guess an exchange can hold my Bitcoin, so to speak. But in the United States, that money in the bank is not yours any longer. Legally, it's not yours. So legally, the bank owes you the money. It's not yours. And the reason why that's an important distinction is that they can decide what you can do with that money because it's not yours. So, for example, I send big wire transfers quite often, and every single time I send a wire transfer, I have to either send an email, typically, if it's even bigger, have a phone call as to why I'm sending that, who I'm sending it to. Yes, I know that person, and that's to send my own money. And that's super inconvenient. It can only happen during business hours. Right. And then if it's a holiday, I can't do it. And if they call me, but I don't answer the phone, then the wire doesn't go out. And it's that's to send my own money. And so you could sort of take that relationship and imagine, okay, well, what if the exchange wants to require you to prove something to send it or doesn't want you to send it for whatever reason? And it could just happen. And so, if we think about it from a banking relationship, that's a potential thing that can happen. I heard many examples of people, this was years ago, but people going to a sanctioned country like Cuba, for example, for vacation, but then their IP address getting logged that they were in a sanctioned country, and then Coinbase wouldn't allow them to get into their account again. They had to go through the U.S. Department of Treasury to get it cleared again. So these are just things that could happen. Yeah. Exactly.
And I think we got used to that sort of banking situation where it's kind of a normal, let's say, for most people. But what if there was a solution where this would not have to be normal and you could really own your property as you
Right.
nicely said at the very beginning. What if that was an option? Well, that option is called Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and you can do that, and you can hold your private keys. It's built that way that you can do it. There are many companies such as ourselves that can help you do it in a very convenient way. You can get into self-custody quite inexpensively, and it's really easy. It's not anymore for just geeks or techie people. It's really as easy as using your phone, for example.
Yeah. So that's number one. So then, if I don't want to take that risk, and I don't want to kind of the way I kind of think about it is that, as people overall, I can't speak for Europeans, although I kind of think I can. But for Europe, for Americans, we just seen where we just kind of want to give more responsibility to the government. So it's, take care of my education and take care of my healthcare and take care of my retirement and teach my kids for me and hold my money for me. And it's like just kind of like continuing to give everything. And at some point we have to kind of stand up and take that responsibility back. So if we wanted to do that, then the other option is I custody or my own Bitcoin. And then you've talked many times about storing your private keys. So in order to actually take custody of it, what I'm actually taking care of or taking custody of is not the coins, but I'm taking custody of the keys. Explain that.
Correct. So there's a little maybe sort of misunderstanding or misconception somehow that the Bitcoin somehow lives on the device, on the hardware wallet. Somehow it's like your physical wallet that you would have, the cash, like the banknotes and the coins in there. That's not the case. It's more like the device is holding more like a password to the network. It's like the identification to prove that you own that Bitcoin on network, right? Like Bitcoin is, very much like an internet. It's a network of, some data and rules, et cetera, et cetera. So that's exactly what the device does. And there are certain sort of levels of protection or certain features that protect those keys very well. So first, the device is not connected to the internet, so you cannot really leak any virus or anything like that from online that nobody can get into the device, like in that way, like through online means.
Well, before we get into
Mm-hmm.
that, I think if we think about it, so we want to protect our private keys. That's really at the end of the day what we're trying to protect. Right. So I think about it sort of like this digital locker system. That's the way I've kind of explained it. So like at high school or something, you have like a locker you can put your books in, and there's like a public address. So your locker is C19 or whatever. And you can tell people that address. They could go put something in your locker for you, but then only you have the key to open that locker and move the contents around. And so really to the point that you're making, we don't download any coins, but we hold the key to move them whenever we want. And so we have to protect the key. And I think of it, there's two main ways that we can hold that key. So number one, we could use like a hot wallet, right? And this is kind of the point that you were trying to say before. That hot wallet could be like an app on my phone. It could be an app on my computer. But the problem with being hot is it's always connected to the internet. And because it's always connected to the internet, then that key is always vulnerable to a hack or some sort of like attack or something like that, right? So that's sort of
Exactly.
that's one way to do that. And again, I've been doing this too long. I've learned the lessons the hard way, so don't learn the lessons the hard way. But I've also lost a lot of Bitcoin from having it on a hot wallet as well. I had some on my hot wallet. I was actually downloading a little bit day by day because I had like a daily limit on how much I could withdraw, and I was trying to send a big transfer. And I was in Mexico at a vacation rental, and I'm guessing this is what happened. I still don't know what happened to this day, but I was using a hot wallet, and I think on the Wi-Fi at the house. And one day I logged in, and the wallet was just empty. And
Oh wow.
so I've learned a lot of lessons. So that's the hot wallet, and I think about that sort of like a wallet you would carry in your pocket, and like you don't have your life savings in that wallet. You would only put in that wallet what you need for the day or what you need just for that little bit of expenses, but you would keep the rest of the money safe. And so then you have the hot wallet that's connected to the internet, and then you have the cold wallet, right? I mean, that's how I think about it. I don't know if that terminology is how you talk about it, but the cold wallet then means the key is stored offline and it's not vulnerable to hackers. I mean, that's like the big distinction there.
You said it exactly right, and the terminology is right as well. It's been used in the industry. So exactly, that device is not connected to the internet. So yeah, nobody can really breach it from from the online world.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so just for the audience,
purpose.
you would have a device that looks about like this. It's like a little USB device that holds the key, and then you plug it into the computer whenever you're ready to sign a transaction, and then you unplug it, and then you can put it into your safe or somewhere safe. Although you don't have to keep it somewhere safe, because you talk about that backup key. And you said Trezor is really the one that sort of pioneered that. So talk about the private key. How do we keep the private key safe? How do we back it up? And why is that important?
Right. So yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, this Wi-Fi password, kind of thing, like 52 characters, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of saved in that device itself, in its memory. And what you can do, and you should do, not to rely on the device at the consumer electronics device itself, but you create a backup of that private key. The way you do it is you basically, when you are onboarding into the device itself, it gives you, instead of that, blah, blah, blah Wi-Fi passwordy thing, it gives you, 12 as an example, because there are other formats, but let's say 12 words of this specialized word list that we've built as a company. And those are like normal words like table, chair, whatever. And they're just like a random order. And you take those words and you write them down on either a piece of paper that you would normally get when you buy a hardware wallet, or there are even specialized accessories such as steel backups, etc., or our own Trezor Keep Metal, which is basically like a tubular thing where you punch in the words for extreme durability, because really you can like throw it in the fire, you throw some acid on it, and it still survives basically.
Yeah, I have one. So, I have one of your devices right here, and so awesome. This is like a metal tumbler, and you like inscribe the words into this.
Right, exactly, and so that backup, and then even if you lost or damaged the device itself, the consumer electronics device, the Trezor thing, you can still take this thing, take the words, and use any other hardware wallet that uses the same standard, which is most of them, and you can just write those words into the device, and it recovers those keys. So all of a sudden you have again access, to that Bitcoin on that network. As we said, it's not on the device; it's on the network, right? So you are opening the locker, as you nicely said it as an example.
Yeah. So you would have 12 words, as you said, just normal words: chair, desk, etc., ocean, banana, monkey.
Right.
And you could remember those 12 words, and you don't need to have anything else. You could go anywhere in the world as long as you have those 12 words in your head, and instantly get your private key back. So
exactly.
if something were to happen where you lost your private key, couldn't access it for some reason, you're in a country that you have to flee for your life, for example, you could leave with those 12 words just in your head. And then at some point when you get to a computer, get another device, you could then kind of reinstall that wallet. I kind of think about it sort of like a lot of people think this is super, super dangerous and risky and scary, and why would you do that? But if you think about, 100 years ago, sort of before the banking system, we would have gold. And a lot of people would go bury that gold in the ground somewhere. And if you had too much, you can't just put it under your pillow. So I'd go put it in the ground, and I'd make a treasure map. But I have to keep that treasure map secure. I have to guard that treasure map. If someone steals my treasure map, they're going to go find my gold. If my house burns down and the treasure map burns up in my house, I'll lose my map to the gold. And so it's not really that different than what we had to deal with in the past. A little bit more, obviously, driven by technology today, but at the same point, the personal responsibility of protecting that still stays the same. What are some best practices that you would have for storing that private key? Or the backup to the private key?
Right. So there are a couple options, or I would mention a couple things you can do as well. So maybe I will talk first about a concept that is called passphrase, which you create the backup, those 12 words, and now imagine you can create a 13th word, or let's say phrase, because it's really called like a passphrase. And that 13th thing can be anything. It can be really like numbers, characters, whatever that is supported. And what it does, it completely changes the private key. Like wait, the wallet private keys, basically the locker is all of a sudden completely different, right? It's like a different locker with different set of keys. And why is that a neat concept? Is because you can you can store that paper with those 12 words somewhere. It could be really like a common place in your apartment, for example, right? Like, like a drawer or something. And that passphrase is something that you maybe save somewhere else, or that you can like really just remember, right? Like as you would remember like a password from your email. So I would say like one.
And would that passphrase be just like a single word, or it's actually a whole phrase?
It can be really like a phrase. It can be phrase. It's totally up to you. It can be like one character. Of course, that's like more brute forceable than than other things. So it's better if it's really like a more complicated phrase or even a full sentence, for example. So that's, let's say, one ways how to look at that. The other way is because we created this backup system that we just described for like those 12 words. But we created also another system or another type of backup that we call multi-share. And it's exactly what it does. You can create multiple shares of those keys. Those are like unique shares. By the way, those individual shares are not 12 but 20 words, but the concept is pretty much the same. The device gives you those words, you write it down, and you can, as a user, set up, for example, 3 out of 5 multi-share situation where you only need those 3 shares to recover that wallet. So, you create 5 shares, you hide them, maybe 2 somewhere in your place, maybe 1 you give a friend, maybe 1 you put like in a safe in a bank or something like this. And then you need any 3 of those 5 to recover that wallet, right? So that's another kind of a neat way how to look at it. And maybe third, and the simplest I would recommend, use exactly as you showed, something like a Trezor Key Metal, which is, like an accessory specifically built for this, which is like super durable. It's kind of easily concealable somewhere, so you can like hide it easily, and that protects, the paper itself. Let's say, like you don't need the paper; it's basically a better medium for durability.
Yeah. Yeah, the durability is great. So if your house floods or has fire or something like that, it doesn't happen. But if you can't get access to it or you lose it, then that's a problem. The redundancy of the multi-share kind of key makes sense, because then you could give 1 to your attorney, 1 to, like you said, in a safe deposit box at a bank.
Exactly.
And they don't have to know where the other ones are, and 5 of them. So hopefully you could find 3 out of the 5 later. So maybe that redundancy sort of helps.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Now, then the problem comes down to, can I trust the private key, or not the private key, but the hardware device itself? And so, I've thought like a multi-signature device works good, where I have like multiple keys or multiple devices holding my keys. And then, I need sort of like your share device, where I'd have 3 devices sign, the transaction. 3 out of 5 would sign it, or 2 out of 3. And then I could have like different devices, because like what happens if Trezor decides, maybe not you or the company, but maybe there's a programmer there that built in a little bit of a backdoor, and then 5 or 6 years from now, when Bitcoin's $1 million, they decide to kind of just like rug pull the whole thing. So like how do we as consumers protect ourselves from something like that?
Right. So I would say we as a company protect you from that by being open source, because everything we publish or our code is publicly out there, and we have even external contributors really checking on everything that we are doing. And actually even the software and everything we build, even the hardware, actually we just document and we just publish it for everybody to see. And we even have our own bounty program where we sort of invite like these like hackers, basically, to try to get into the software and hardware, and we would basically pay them for disclosing those issues to us, right? So if somebody finds an issue, we are totally happy to fix it. And everything we built is on purpose done in that way. So even if we are not here as a company, the system basically can go on, right? So anybody can basically build on that system. And the backup, we were talking about, is a great example of it, because we just publish it once we invented it, and the whole industry is using it, right? Like all our competitors, the direct and even the software wallets, for example, who are not direct competitors to us. So yeah, the open source is sort of like an insurance policy, right, for everybody out there who's buying our products.
Now, one thing about Bitcoin that makes it unique, well, lots of things make it unique, but one thing that makes it unique from all the other cryptocurrencies is that when Bitcoin pushes through changes, they're always backwards compatible, meaning I don't, as a Bitcoin node operator, I don't have to take on the new updates, and my Bitcoin database, my Bitcoin will still work the same, even if I don't take the new update. But with Trezor, I've used Trezor forever since I've been in the space. But one thing that I've seen is like every time I plug in my hardware device, I have to do a new update. And a problem that I've had that has made me very scared and angry at one point, and one point I thought I was going to lose my my assets on there, is because it wasn't backwards compatible. Meaning, if I didn't take the update, then I could no longer use my device. And if I didn't have my backup phrase, I couldn't do the update. So basically, I had a device that had my stuff on there, but I couldn't do the update because I couldn't find my key. But if I didn't do the update, I couldn't use it.
Right. So everything so I would start with this. Like the backup of the private key is really the most important thing, right? So if you don't have it, or if you somehow don't have an access to it, it's close to being done. Like it's really important for everybody to keep that, right? So that I would say is a like rule of thumb or really important principle in the whole self-custody world. That being said, the backwards compatibility, I totally agree, it's extremely important, and we really try to do it as much as possible, as basically as much as the hardware technology allows us. I will try to explain. So we still have on the market Trezor Model 1, which is a like 10.5 years old device, like by design, right? But we are still updating everything, in terms of like software and firmware, basically the software that runs on the device. And it's kind of awesome because like this the cold storage is all about sort of the long-term durability in terms of like the device being able to protect those private keys. So that's why we keep working on these updates. But that being said, sometimes it might happen that simply, I don't know, the standards in Windows and Apple changes or something like this, and all of a sudden we have to do certain updates where it requires sort of like a required update for you. You cannot just like leave the device kind of not having it updated, because then the next update would not work for you, right? Something you maybe know even from some bigger brands such as Apple, right? Like at some point they would tell you, okay, this iPhone, I don't know, 5 is no longer supported, or you cannot upload this app to it, or stuff like that. So that happens to us, and it's simply almost like a hardware / ecosystem limitations, where maybe there are some bigger players, bigger platforms that of course you will be using, like like the Macs and stuff, where then we would have to do updates such as this.
Yeah. What I had to do in that one example I'm talking about is I just had to go find an older version of the Trezor manager or whatever, and I was able to download like an old version, and then I could use my hardware device without taking the update. So it wasn't a Windows problem. As long as I could find the old version, I could run it. I just couldn't run it on the new version. So anyway, something to think about. I think that's very dangerous. And I get it. Like to your point, sometimes you have to because of the software, and sometimes you need to because you need to keep people secure. But if I decide not to be more secure and not take the updates, like I should be able to still use my device. But to the point that you made, and for everybody listening, I mean, back it up. Keep
yeah,
the
for sure.
up.
And also exactly, and also I will say we are really quite meticulous about this. So whenever we see anything like that being a problem in the future, we take extreme steps, like proactive steps to inform anybody, with notifications in the apps, etc., etc. So we really make sure users are safe, basically.
Yeah. So, you guys keep pushing new products out, which, I mean, how much better can we, secure our private key? Tell us what's coming out next. What's kind of the roadmap here?
I actually like the way you ask it, like how much better it can get, because security-wise, the standard is pretty much similar, even though we added some new features there as well in terms of security. But I would say like one of the main things is basically the more moving more from that like geeky space into this like consumer electronics, mainstream, where we are all used to like a fancy devices, like Apples and Samsungs and whatnot. And so I think with the hardware world, we are seeing the same thing, right? Like people want more, basically, and that's great. I think they should want more in that sense. So we are just launching something we call Trezor Say 5. It's basically the most user-friendly hardware wallet that we have ever built. It's really super easy to use. It has beautiful touch display. There's haptic feedback for like really easy confirmations and really nice kind of experiences. These micro interactions, swipe gestures, etc., etc. So that's one. We also added, as I already hinted, something called Secure Element on the PCB, which is basically a specialized chip that protects those private keys, even if some hackers got like a physical possession of your device, and they would try to through like some advanced techniques, some laser scanning, whatever, to extract those keys. That secure element would really make it extremely hard for them to extract, on the verge of being so expensive that it would almost might not make sense, compared to maybe what you might have on that device. So yeah, it's actually, I would say, extremely secure, and it's beautiful. It's really nice design, and we are proud of it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I've tried multiple hardware devices, and I've used multiple at different times and at the same time, kind of diversifying my security almost, if you will, right? Rather than put it all on one key, put on multiple keys. But right. I've always thought Trezor was the easiest one to use, and so that's probably really also the main criticism or main kind of pain point that we hear, just overall, that Bitcoin self-custody is very difficult. And so certainly making it easier with better, design, UI, UX is a big step and much needed.
For sure. Like every I would say every update, both software and hardware, you can see, I hope you can see that we are, getting better in user experience, because that's exactly, what we are after, to be the best in the market in that regard.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is good information. Again, like I said at the intro, like one of the biggest shifts to this technology has brought us is the ability to store our assets in a way that can't be stolen. And so I just recommend that everybody do that. I mean, we can finally do it. We certainly should, but only if you have the personal responsibility in order to do that. And Trezor's making it easier and easier and easier. Anything else you want to kind of say in closing?
I think you've wrapped it up nicely in a way. I don't know the exact words used, but like if you can, just do it. Like Bitcoin has been built, as we discussed already, to be, held by individuals, by the sovereign individuals. It's like a peer-to-peer, electronic cash system. So yeah, you can do that. It's not. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't need a PhD in cryptography to do that. That's what we are here for. We are here, as a company, to make it really easy for you. I think we are doing that, and you should give it a try over, ETF or something else.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for joining us today. I learned a lot. Like I said earlier, I wish I was in Prague hanging out with you guys, but I'll try and get out there next year.
Time.
Right. With that, we'll go ahead and sign it off. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.